If you go on Google, they track everything they have on you. All the websites that you've logged into with Google, they have all that information, and you don't think about
The
it much.
the biggest problem is they still provide, usually the ones that are the biggest tracker are usually the ones that provide the best service. Like, at least for me, like when I use Google versus something more privacy oriented like DuckDuckGo, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I get what I want on Google in a much shorter time span compared to DuckDuckGo. So it's literally, we don't have much choice. We either have to sacrifice efficiency, or we have to sacrifice privacy.
And now, even with ChatGPT, they have all that information. And they have more complex information because if you're using it for your work, now they have numbers if you put your numbers in.
That is very true. Like, especially like ChatGPT is getting more and more prevalent. And honestly, I think based on what I'm hearing in my friend group and things like that, people are dumping information there left and right, like even from their chat groups, just to summarize what happened in their chats and things like that. And
Wow.
we don't know what OpenAI is doing. And theoretically, they can gather all that data and then make it a corpus and then train the AI on it. And I have seen some other papers on how to, what do you call, subvert machine learning models to gain the training data from it, right? Like, and when I was doing some development, also getting help from ChatGPT, I realized that even ChatGPT is leaking some of the internal libraries that it's using. I forgot the
Wow.
library's name. I kind of like used ChatGPT, and it gave me a specific library, and I put it into my VS Code. I was like, hey, I've never heard this library. Let me just also pip install it, download it, right? And then when I download it, it's not on the internet, right? And I'm like, what's going on? Let me just Google the library. And when I Google it, I see tons of forums talking about how people are suspecting that this is an internal library and this is just leaking outside of ChatGPT.
Yeah, because now you're able to upload photos and you're able to upload files, and who knows how many more things you're going to be able to upload. But now you're just not copying and pasting data. You're uploading files, and ChatGPT is able to get all of those files, and they're explicit in what they do with that. They use it for their training.
Training.
So
And
is
I would also bet that they would also have a leg in the government departments, like for, what do you call, sometimes like when government has like watch lists and stuff like that and tracking people, right? I would not be surprised if OpenAI is kind of collaborating with government on that area as well, on certain accounts.
yeah, because they warn, at least the government warns. They warn you of using TikTok and how China runs TikTok, but our government's doing the same exact thing with Facebook and everything it owns. And at least now with Twitter, I hope that Elon Musk is being responsible in safeguarding, I guess, X now from government interference. But that's just like one slice of the pie. And
I've always been a little bit scared of private companies because their transparency is a little bit less compared to public companies, right? Like Twitter
yeah,
used to be a public, and then all their financial information and most information got online, right? They had earning calls and things like that. The CEO usually gave a huge account on what's going on in the company. Now we don't have that. So if things kind of go south there, like we're not sure if it's going to get leaked to us or not.
and another interesting thing that I don't think anyone has really talked about is Truth Social being owned by Trump. So if anyone gets kicked out of that platform, would it be violation of the First Amendment since Trump is going to be a government official pretty soon? He's going to be an elected official. He's going to be the president. And even though he may put Truth Social in I forgot what it's called, but giving the responsibility to like a third party of operating the platform. He's he is still the owner of it. So if anyone gets kicked out of that platform, which I haven't heard anyone really getting kicked out since he wants to make it about free speech and all. But if no one breaks the law and they get their account deactivated, will that be a violation of the First Amendment?
Yeah, that's been a longly debated area, I think, especially in law and constitutional law. I heard from a friend of mine who's also studying law that constitutional law is the hardest like area to kind of like study, because
Mhm.
things are very generic, like you have your freedom of speech, but the question is how like convenient the freedom of speech has to be, like for the other people, right? Like, can I just interrupt an event and then just use my freedom of speech there? What's the amount of interruption, reasonable interruption I can do? So those kind of like things are really ongoing. When you give like freedom of speech, it's going to be a
Yeah.
huge boundary.
I mean, that's the entire reason that we even have a Supreme Court to interpret the Constitution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're getting a little bit off topic, but taking it back to security measures. I know we briefly talked about this, but what can people actually do? Because it just seems that we have no choice in using the internet now. And in order to get on the internet, we need to go through a matter of servers. And who is managing all those servers, the networks, the devices that we're using? Like, who knows what other third party is gaining access to the same network that we're on? Because we've seen it that if you stay at a hotel, that's a shared network, or if you're in a Starbucks, that's a shared network. So if someone else is on that in that network, they could actually access your device. And if you use your bank account information, they are able to extract that from your device and mirror like a good party, I should say, someone with good intentions, but then they have all this information on you, and you have like little recourse for that. Like, what can we do to safeguard ourselves?
Yeah, usually there's a whole different area when you're using public networks like airport networks or Starbucks networks, right?
Yeah.
There is a couple of other protections that you can take in those areas. And for the public one, there is like a list of things that I can probably pull up. Uh, what do you go? What should I do? Let me actually kind of just find it. I kind of have to access my notes for that. I had like a list of the things I do, especially to what do you call whenever I'm logging into Starbucks or things like that to ensure
Hmm.
protection. But
Yeah.
one thing that's advised is usually don't try to log into your sensitive information like bank accounts, right? Or don't use your social security or things like that because there is a high chance of middleman attacks, right? Someone can, for instance, create a fake router, right? There's a lot of demonstration of that on the internet.
Yeah.
But what are the things you do as well, personally?
So if I'm in a public network, I mean, I don't really do too much sensitive or sensitive behaviors, in my device, but I may have. Um, I don't consciously do it, but it may just happen that I think, I need to do this real quick, and I'm on a public network. So it may
One
happen.
thing is, yeah, one thing that we can actually use in private networks, sorry, public networks, is a VPN that also helps even in private networks, right? Because
Yeah.
let's say you're using a private network, right? The VPN can protect you from your ISP looking at your data. I believe by law they were required to keep your internet data
Yeah.
for a certain amount of months or years, something like that. However, the VPN can help you in public and private networks, right? And
Mhm.
one thing, of course, is the HTTPS as well. You have to check for if you're like connecting to HTTPS websites, because let's say if you're not, right? For instance, then you're sending data in plain text.
Yeah.
And the problem about that is like, um, while along the way, right, like let's say you send the data, the HTTP plain text, right,
Yeah.
there's a smaller, in my opinion, there's a smaller chance that an attacker is going to get that data from like the path that it takes to the server to reach the server, compared to like in the same network, right? Like if I
Right.
use a sniffer, you're going to use wireless. If I use a wireless sniffer or something like that, you can kind of get that HTTP information, especially if you're targeting one person. It can be very helpful to that, but in terms of like listening on routers, plain text data,
Yeah.
it's gonna be, even if it's plain text, it's gonna be hard to make sense and interpret that data compared to an attacker doing that in a public network. Another like area what you can do is definitely turn off file sharing. That's
Mhm.
I think it can be automatic in some devices, and obviously also keep your software updated, and also monitor your network connectivity, like see if there's any unusual activity when you're connected to the network, like make sure you're not connected to networks that you don't know. You can confirm your network with the clerk, the cashier, to ensure you're connecting to the correct network. And if you see more than one networks with the same name, you can be a little bit cautious about that.